Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Purple Politics. I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez-Dockery, and there is much to report. So let's jump right into the drama, which is continuing on Capitol Hill. In his first big showdown, an unyielding conservative is continuing to cause trouble. In his early weeks as Speaker, Mike Johnson faced the challenge of transitioning from a staunch conservative in the backbenches to a pragmatic leader. Despite objections from some Republicans, he successfully pushed through a stopgap spending bill with overwhelming Democratic support, mirroring a package he opposed just weeks prior to a lesser-known lawmaker. Let's state the obvious. Bipartisan movement, bipartisan is a good thing. It is not evil. It is not, wrong. It is actually showing common sense governance because, as I stated previously in other episodes, you cannot be a purist when governing. Because the ultimate obligation, responsibility, and to whom you are accountable to is to those people like myself, like you, your family members. We are once again facing a potential government shutdown because of the stopgap measures that McCarthy put into effect was going to run out this week. So let's first of all give Mike Johnson kudos because he was able to reach across the aisle. He was able to put in what is called a CR or a compromise resolution to be able to fund our government, to provide necessary benefits, and to pay our government employees, military, Social Security administrations. It's to continue that through January and some in early February. So as Mike Johnson, who, yes, he is a very conservative legislature from the South, recognized the political reality that far-right spending proposals cannot pass in a divided government. Again, we have a very small majority hold by Republicans in the House of Representatives. The Senate is Democrat. Biden is Democrat. You got to work together if we're going to fund our government. In a strategic move, he collaborated with Democrats to avoid a pre-Thanksgiving government shutdown, a decision that drew criticism from hardliners within his party, but spared him a challenge for now. Despite this backlash, Johnson's reputation as a trusted figure among Republicans, distinct from his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, played to his advantage. This stopgap bill fell short of the far-right expectations, lacking preferred budget cuts and policy provisions. Johnson defended his compromise, emphasizing the need to avoid a shutdown and highlighting the bill's unique feature, staggered deadlines for funding government agencies. While some of Johnson's innovation as gimmicky, Democrats were cautiously encouraged by his bipartisan approach. The interim bill marks the beginning of Johnson's spending challenge, as he pledged to avoid further temporary measures. He faces the task of passing spending bills, navigating challenges from both sides, and reaching consensus, compromise with the Senate and White House. Johnson remains determined, but risks losing support from far right if he falters on key issues in the days ahead. The Senate sends Biden's stopgap funding bill immediately, averting a government shutdown to Biden administration White House. Biden, who is currently in San Francisco, signed that stopgap measure, once again showing that sometimes working, negotiation, consensus absolutely works. And it has been a staple of our government for decades, for centuries before, until now we have such loud, minute groups, both on the right and on the left, who are obstructionists. They are not causing change. They are obstructing the way government is run. And I will say for once and final time, you know what, Republican conservatives, please get your heads out of your muffins, because this is not how you govern. This is not about this uniparty, which is, again, a new, I guess, MAGA, Freedom Caucus buzzword. And I hear it a lot on the talk shows and podcasts that I listen to. This isn't about a uniparty. And what's wrong with a uniparty? You know what that means is that you are representing 100% of the United States. The United States is not divided, us against them. We, the people, deserve better. We, the people, demand better. And maybe that is why RFK Jr. is really doing well in the polls. Maybe that is why I am hearing from Republicans that say if their candidate isn't the primary person and it is between Trump and Biden, that they're going to vote for Kennedy. It is time to stop the BS and start learning to use common sense. Because if you want to be a purist, if you want to be this person that is an absolute disruption to our lives, go and get a podcast, go get a radio show. But lead those that are able to govern our people, our citizenship, and putting forth what is in the best interest for Americans, then please give up the staunchness. You are losing people. You are not, and I am saying this to both Democrats and Republicans, you are not all completely in charge. You do not represent the whole of America. And the reality is, those of us that are not on Capitol Hill, those of us that are not trying to be influencers and bully pulpits, are saying, what about us? It's like that song by Pink. What about us? We want a government that works. We want consensus building. We want common sense to come back. We want the end of these government bailouts and hobby type of expenditures to be snuck into the budget. We want less government poking their nose in our business, but we want you to do your job. Secure the border. Provide us strong military in our nation. Provide security. Continue with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That helps so many of our citizens. Enough with the influencing thing. Enough with this arguing up. And let's face it, at least let's thank God for one thing. They decided to storm off. The Freedom Caucus and others decided to band with Democrats to stop another appropriations bill from even being debated. So what's good for the goose is not good for the gander when it comes to Speaker of the House, whether it's McCarthy or Mike Johnson. But they will disrupt the operation of our government and not do what they are paid to do. Oh, and by the way, they are still getting paid. Their funding is secure. They have no problems. So now they stomped off and their little temper tantrum, and once again, they are not 2 years old, and stormed off and shut down once again Capitol Hill. And thankfully, Mike Johnson had the wherewithal to realize that if we're going to do right by all the constituents of the United States, then we are going to have to work with the other side. I can assure you, as an attorney, it is never a 100% win all. Hell, let's look at Trump's former litigations. He has had to come out of pocket on some. He won on some major points, but he lost on some others because that is the way it goes. I think even Trump can understand the power and the necessity of negotiation, because the bottom line is he is a real estate mogul. So why is it that we expect more from our children, that we expect more from our family members, that we expect, well, those of us that are small business owners or employees of large Fortune 500 corporations, why is it that we expect more out of ourselves, to work with each other, to be good neighbors, to be good stewards of our own budgets, of our own economic circumstances, but also to help others, when then we're supposed to give a pass and kudos for you blocking everything? As much as we complain, or there were complaints about the squad on the left and the progressive liberals that are loud and rancor, we can still say enough is enough on this rattle-browsing, temper tantrum Republicans to the right. Pluralism is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. I am Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but be right back. We have some updates in the Republican primary race. Welcome back. And now some serious, shocking now. Welcome back to Purple Politics. And for those of you just joining, I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. And now for the most up-to-date news in the Republican primary. One of our primary candidates has suspended their election run. Yes, that actually very admirable and nice Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina and his 2024 presidential bid, shocking even his campaign staff. Now, for those of you who watched the debates, this most recent debate down in Miami, Senator Scott did very well. He is so likable, and he is a true gentleman, and he has a nice calmness about him. But the reality is he never got rolling. And we're setting aside the Trump mega bus in the primaries. We're talking about within the other core. Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott surprised many by abruptly announcing his withdrawal from the 2024 race on Fox News Channel Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy. The announcement shocked donors and campaign staff, with some learning about Scott's decision while watching the show. Despite entering the race with optimism in May, the South Carolina senator struggled to gain traction in the polls, even with significant financial support from high-profile donors. Scott's unexpected departure comes amid a broader struggle within the GOP field, where former President Donald Trump continues to dominate, and we're talking dominate, despite facing legal challenges. Actually, in my opinion, and of those listening to many pundits around the nation, I think that all of these legal issues, all of these indictments and these legal issues has actually helped propel Trump to such extraordinary leads in the primary. The more the DOJ, this politicized judicial system is against him, the better he does. Somehow you got to think at some point, someone's going to go, is it really good for the nation to do this? However, Trump, who is a master of branding himself and marketing, has utilized these indictments, has utilized this civil litigation in this trial that's currently going. And again, it's a civil litigation up in New York to his benefit. But because every time there's something that comes down the pipeline against Trump, his poll numbers surge. So the reality is that Tim Scott, who was always in the single digits, really didn't have a chance. Now, Trump has always spoken very highly of Senator Scott, so maybe he's still in the running, potentially as a VP candidate. We'll see. But one thing I will say is that I have been extraordinarily impressed by Senator Scott. I did not know who he was until he jumped in the primary. I am hopeful that someone with clear vision, understanding, and a very calming way of looking at politics and the way this government should be governed is a very good representative for not only all citizens, but for those constituents of South Carolina. Now, this also leaves the debate. So we have, I'm going to say debate again twice. There is one last debate scheduled in early December that will be held in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And the four main people that are left, well, really it's between two, but we have two others that are very left. You have Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Nikki is gaining on polls and gaining a lot of traction because the more she appears on these debates, she's really coming forward as someone that has been seen as very moderate towards social issues, especially that of abortion, because let's face it, people, the abortion issue is looming hard again in this next election as it did in 2022. You still have Ron DeSantis, my great governor of Florida. I love him as my governor. I will say it. Vivek Ramaswamy, who is still being disruptive, who is very straightforward, but is a breath of fresh air. And honestly, his messaging is true. He has the legs to run this government. He has the legs to at least campaign. I don't know if he can run the government, but one thing is for sure, it is refreshing to see a younger generation be represented than these elderly people. Then you still have Chris Christie. He's just, we're not sure what he's doing. Sometimes he makes a lot of sense. Other times he's just on a Trump bashing tour, but we shall see. Other interesting news. I'm going back to Capitol Hill because George Santos announced that he will not run for re-election following damning ethics committee report. And let's remind you that George Santos is now being investigated by the FBI for misappropriation of campaign funds. And this ethics committee has come down with a major blow as its findings. So let's just say, if you want to keep up with the Kardashians, it is expensive. And that is what it seems like George Santos has been doing, because he has been funneling campaign funds to have a luxurious lifestyle. Now, I'm for one, it's great if you have the means to have designer clothes, Hermes, Ferragamo, which is just some of the few things that George Santos was into. That's great, but not at the expense of your donors. And that is the biggest issue. So George Santos, of course, says this is a witch hunt and that he's denying all wrongdoing. But the ethics committee found that the campaign treasurer would funnel $20,000 more money directly to George Santos. He would take out ATM withdrawals of $1,000, or another time a couple of thousand when he would go out to the casinos and gamble. He spent $7,000 at Ferragamo. He purchases Hermes, and apparently his campaign, and maybe this is a legitimate cost for his Botox and others. Now, though Santos is still vehemently stating he is innocent and this is just a political hack job for him to lose his seat, let's remember that in 2019, when he won his seat, he actually gave a crucial majority position for the Republicans, and he flipped a longtime Democratic seat in Long Island. So more will be coming out as the FBI will be utilizing the ethics committee's findings as well. But one of the things that was most striking is that George Santos, though he claimed to have this very grandiose lifestyle prior to entering into Congress and government life, the reality is that his lifestyle, his standard of living greatly increased upon running and winning this congressional seat. Yes, there have been many senators and representatives in Congress that have been able to utilize their position and have made major gains. Let's look at Representative Pelosi. She entered Congress. She was worth around 1 million. Now she's basically a mega millionaire because of her stock purchases and business dealings, and some would say from learning of these things while in Congress. Other members have been able to greatly increase their financial gain and means by writing books like Bernie Sanders or Ted Cruz. So there are economic benefits to being in government and utilizing your position for personal gain. However, not at the cost and expense of your donors. And so George Santos, he did the right thing, although the ethics committee is not stopping there. Now they have brought it to the floor, and they are now going to have a vote and I guess another hearing to exile, kick him out, boot him out, because his next election isn't coming up. And so now there will be a vote on the floor to exile Santos. So the committee's report accused Santos of attempting to fraudulently exploit every aspect of his House candidacy for his personal financial profit. I mean, what's going on with our government? We have representative from New Jersey that has been indicted for taking bribes, for being found with gold bars, things like that. We now have George Santos, who's basically taking from his campaign kitty to buy very expensive clothes and lifestyle. There needs to be some control here. We need to bring back common sense. This is the biggest issue here. This isn't supposed to be about influencer. This isn't supposed to be about, look how pretty I am. Let me see how many people will follow me and let me sell my brand. This is about you being elected to represent people who trusted you to lead, to be a leader, to do what's right. And stealing from your donors is not that. Now, again, these are all allegations. I'm not saying he did it completely, but it does look damning. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be back and talk about President Biden's Apex appearance. Welcome back. And for those of you who are just joining, I am Alina Gonzalez-Dockery, and it is Purple Politics. So San Francisco cleaned up its streets to much of people's chagrin because they were hosting the Asian Pacific Economic Exchange Convention, or conference, I should say, for lack of a better explanation. I don't like that. Start over. Welcome back. And now let's talk about San Francisco cleaning its streets for the apex. President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping of China have met this week in San Francisco. And this is very important because though many will say China's the enemy, China is what we have to be worried about, there is a shift in the winds that China is not the predominant apex, you get the pun, country. See, China is needing us just as much as we are requiring and needing things from China. See, it's an interesting turn of events because China is currently undergoing an economic recession. They're having the real estate bubble about to burst, just like we experienced back in 2009. But it was a very important meeting because it highlights what we can do to fix relations, not maybe strengthen relations between the US and China, but at least let's start calming things down because right now around the globe, things are very hairy, scary. So when President Biden met President Xi Jinping, there was a noticeable shift in the power dynamic with Xi seeking American financial investments. Let's start all over. Sorry, starting all over, cut this part. Welcome back to Purple Politics. For Biden, a subtle shift in the power balance with China's Xi Jinping. San Francisco cleaned up its streets for the apex and for the meeting between President Biden and President Xi Jinping of China. When President Biden met with President Xi Jinping, there was a noticeable shift in the power dynamic, with Xi seeking American financial investments and a relaxation of technology export controls. This is very important to note. China is currently undergoing a real estate bubble burst, just like we experienced back in 2007, 2008, and 2009. And it's very good in the sense that maybe we can start normalizing our relations with China and maybe stop the rhetoric that China is the enemy. So this summit, the Apex Summit, produced potential breakthroughs on stopping fentanyl precursors and resuming military-to-military communications. While Biden's aides acknowledge the short-lived nature of these outcomes, they see an opportunity to rebuild competitiveness and limit China's gains in the Pacific before the presidential election. However, many expect Xi to renew efforts to surpass the U.S. in military, technological, and economic power. And let's face it, Xi has promised to reduce the fentanyl production and export of fentanyl, which is becoming an epidemic here in the United States with overdoses. They have broken that before. They did the same agreement during the Trump administration, and they broke that as well. But this time it's a little different because they are needing our buying power. They are needing their exports to come into the United States because of their economic issues that they are suffering. This change in tone began over the summer with Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken reporting an eagerness in China for visits by Treasury Secretary Janet I. Yellen. May need some reader here, folks. And Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Meetings between Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and his counterpart, Wang Yi, culminated in the 4-hour meeting between Biden and Xi. Xi voiced concerns about China's portrayal and protested the cutoff of the fastest computer chips. The tone was measured and occasionally friendly, with Biden recalling past trips with Xi. But of course, it didn't stop Biden from walking out and immediately calling Xi a dictator. And what do you expect? Because he is a communist and he is ruling over a communist nation. And there is big time, I would say strong accusations that China is the enemy and China is the true thing from many of the Republican primary candidates, except for one, and that would be Vivek. But this is a moment to open up the communications, to reduce the vitriol that's being launched between the two countries, and also an acknowledgement that Xi is very correct. China and the United States are the two largest world powers, and the world is big enough for the both to exist. But it is a time to exist with peace. As China continues its support of Russia and its partnership with Iran, it has a huge influence over what could happen in the Middle East. It has a big influence over what could culminate in the war between Russia and Ukraine. So let's have hope. As they say, hope springs eternal. However, it is a time for measured discussions and opening, because we are in need of resolving and tempering down the conflicts that have been occurring and that we're seeing in the Pacific, most specifically with Taiwan and with the Philippines as recently as a few weeks ago. The most striking element was Xi's abandonment of the wolf warrior tone, a diplomatic style declaring the end of American dominance. Again, he stated to Biden, this world is big enough for the two of us. It's important to state that the reason why the U.S. seems, both under President Trump and currently under President Biden, are really seeking a reduction in the fentanyl production is because all of this is being exported to Mexico, and it is just flooding from the cartels over this lovely border situation we have. We are seeing a fentanyl crisis of overdosing, and it's poisoning as well. It's not, Vivek was so true to state that it's not just an overdose. It's not people who are addicted to the fentanyl and they're overdosing, but fentanyl is being used and snuck into pills that people think are taking, like, let's say, for instance, Percocet. They think they're taking a Percocet or a Vicodin, and it's actually laced with fentanyl, and it's deadly. More and more American families are being touched by this fentanyl crisis. So whatever can be done to limit the production of the chemicals and products that are used in fentanyl, the better. But also, this is a cry for President Biden. You know what? Get your tuchus down to the border. Shut down this border. I've been hearing the Democrats saying that it's the Republicans that are refusing to provide more money for border security, when in fact that money is to go to more processing of undocumented migrants flowing in by the millions into our country, bankrupting large cities like New York City. New York City is now having a massive cut of 5% across the board, with hiring freezes at the police department, to be able to continue to provide shelter, food, and economic relief to all of these undocumented migrants, these illegal migrants. And we have even a more striking issue. These are not asylum seekers like you would think from Venezuela. We are having flows of people coming through our southern border from Africa, from Middle East, from China, from other countries that are not under any of the stated asylum-seeking qualifications. We have to shut down this border. We need meaningful immigration reform. But having an open border for Biden and the Democrats to state this is a Republican problem because they do not want to fund. They do want to fund more more security to the border. They want to stop the flow because what we are seeing in large cities such as New York City, such as Chicago, that their own budgets are not able to maintain that flow. Imagine what it's like for all of those little border towns or the states. We are at an inflationary state that families are struggling to buy eggs. Eggs. It used to be a dozen eggs were 99 cents, $1.99. Now you're looking at $6. Gas, yes, it's going down a little bit, but it's still, we have to start looking at the realities of where is this money coming from? How are we going to continue to, and I know I jumped into a different subject here, but how are we going to continue to provide for the stability of our economic benefit when we have a free flow through the border of millions of people, 7 million since 2021, and also this fentanyl crisis because the cartels are able to just ship in and truck in bricks upon bricks of fentanyl that's being mixed in with God only knows what, because we had that problem where it can be mixed in to pills and you have fake medications looking like the real thing and you can't tell, or being mixed in with all of this marijuana and other products. Xi made it a point to state that the problem with the United States is we are a drug addicted country because of the promotion of pharmaceutical companies on advertisements on TV, but also the legalization of pot and such. Maybe that is true, but one thing is for sure, something needs to be done. When you have hundreds of thousands of Americans dying of fentanyl overdoses, when you have families that are destroyed when they find out that their son, their daughter overdosed and was found dead, it is something that no family should be going through. Yes, drug addiction is a disease. However, being able to come together and try to stop the mechanisms in creating this horrifically addicted and lethal drug, the better. So I will applaud Biden for sitting down at the table with Xi, and I applaud Xi for sitting down with Biden. Although there was some painful moments, and you could see it in the face of Blinken at times, meaningful conversations have to be opened. That is how we're going to be able to calm all of this aggression, all of this vitriol, all of this violence. The violent speak has to be tempered down. We have to find a way to live once again peacefully. So let's hope that those people that are in charge on both of the administrations of Xi and Biden are able to continue this momentum and be able to use their influence to temper things down. Wouldn't that be a wonderful gift to everybody in this world if we were able to temper things down? So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back, and we will discuss all things Trump and his litigation. Last segment. Well, if you haven't seen the tweets or the truths or whatever they're calling them now, Trump is back and he is just busy on his phone tweeting all things. Well, and I will tell you why. a New York appellate judge, lifted the gag order that barred Trump from maligning court staff in his fraud trial up in New York. The appellate court temporarily lifted a gag order preventing Donald Trump from commenting on court personnel, citing concerns about free speech. The order was initially imposed by trial judge Arthur Engoron on October 3rd after Trump made a false comment about a law clerk on social media during his New York civil fraud trial. You know, we all dealt with the orange man and his mean tweets. Well, he's back. If y'all missed him, you know, I understand. Yes, you have the right to free speech. And yes, this is a civil trial, so it's not criminal. But the reality is that at least, you know, if I were his attorney, I wish he would temper it down. But let's face it, if his own daughter couldn't get him to temper it down when he was president, nobody's going to temper him down. And now he is locked, loaded, and letting it go. The appellate judge, David Friedman, issued a stay suspending the gag order, allowing Trump to freely comment on court staff while the appeals process unfolds. Friedman questioned Engoron's authority to regulate Trump's speech outside the courtroom and emphasized that gag orders are typically used in criminal cases to prevent jury influence, which is not applicable in Trump's civil trial, because remember, Trump's civil trial is what is called a bench trial. This judge is the arbiter of the facts. He will weigh all the testimony, evidence, and make a determination. Now, why would Trump and his legal team agree to a bench trial? I don't know. Seems like a misfire there, personally speaking. Even though it's New York City, and yes, it's primarily blue, as some people state, it's really amazing to think that someone would want a bench trial, especially with a judge that tends to be a little bit leaning, not little, has been very much leaning in favor of the attorney general. And then we can always go into why this is even being brought when there is no victim, there is no bank that's out of money, there is no loss of money. In fact, everybody profited from Trump's loans. But that is a discussion for another time. So going back to this emergency hearing, Trump's lawyers argued that the appellate judge made the right decision, asserting Trump's constitutional First Amendment rights to discuss bias in his trial. The legal team has consistently scrutinized law clerk Allison Greenfield, alleging her partisan influence in the trial involving the former president. Engoron defended Greenfield's role, but Trump's lawyers argued that the judge's orders, including the gag order, infringe on free speech, particularly when it comes to core political speech by the potential 2024 Republican presidential nominee. Trump was fined $15,000 for violating this gag order, and Engoron extended the penalties to his lawyers after they questioned the law clerk's role. Now, remember, this law clerk is known for questioning lawyers, questioning jury pools, has asserted authority in this. Engoron has relinquished much of his authority. And this is not just in this Trump trial. It has been in other trials. She is known for this. This is a reputation that both of them have, that she is basically queen bee of the courtroom, and she gets to ask questions and make opinions and state things. And I can tell you, though, the clerks in the courtroom do manage the what is going on, and they're ensuring that we get everything marked, and may answer questions asked of her by the judge. They are not there as a presiding arbiter of facts, and that has been one of the chief complaints about this particular clerk, Ms. Greenfield. The appellate judge's ruling also applies to Trump's lawyers and others involved in the case, which, again, I have never heard of a gag order against an attorney representing a client and being able to state their opinion on how the facts of the case are going, or what they find are going to be limitations in their ability to present an unbiased trial. Despite concerns raised about potential bias, Trump's legal team contends that the orders restrict their ability to address perceived partisanship and bias in a trial that could have significant financial and business consequences for the former president. So let's go into this. This trial was brought by an attorney general who specifically ran on vote for me because I am taking Trump down. And how she perceives to do that is by bringing a civil lawsuit on a very arbitrary statute that remains on the New York law books that says that anyone can accuse a business person of fraud, bring fraud forward, even though it is victimless. So the judge has already granted a partial summary judgment. And what that means is that he stated that the attorney general basically proved that, yes, Trump committed fraud by overinflating his financial holdings, his real estate. Now, I can tell you, I live in Southwest Florida. I live in Naples. It is just across the state from Mar-a-Lago, basically. That judge found that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. We're talking prime beachfront property on the Atlantic with a country club, rooms, like 50 rooms or something. I mean, this is a huge property. I can assure you there are much smaller homes that are are on sale right now in Naples for $28 million and being sold than compared to Mar-a-Lago. So these are some of the things that will probably be taken up on appeal. But yet this judge has already made a determination that Trump has falsified or overinflated his financial holdings and his wealth in order to secure mortgages and loans that benefited him. Now, let's take a step back. Banks, when they are providing loans, whenever they are providing mortgages or using pieces of property as collateral, they have their own due diligence. They're not just going to take Donald's word saying, oh, I'm worth $1 billion. No, they're going to do an appraisal. They're going to check out to see his creditworthiness. They have their own requirements. And again, all of the banks that have been in business dealings with Trump and Trump's sons and Trump Industries and all that have stated that they have made money off of this, that they had profited greatly, and that Trump has always paid back his loans and paid on time. People like to throw, well, he filed bankruptcy like 6 times or something. Those were restructuring. And it was usually during, like, I think one of them was during this savings and loans crash of the 80s, again, in the real estate bubble bursts and such like that. But then again, it is normal for very large Fortune 500 companies to restructure on this. Again, this is not based on someone losing money or being defrauded out of money. There is no victim. And again, you already have a finding of fraud. So now it's like, okay, we have to defend that. We have to show that, first of all, the valuations that the judge and the attorney general are looking at are far off. But if the attorney general does win this case, and honestly, based on my personal belief that the judge is extremely biased against Trump to the point that his own wife is very, very much a Trump hater and is posting much of memes and rants against Trump, that she is seeking upwards of $250 million fine, and also stripping the Trump's ability to continue to have business holdings in New York City. That was huge. How is it And I find this disingenuous because when you have a victimless based trial and you are seeking to forcibly strip someone of their business holding and real estate holdings, which is Trump Tower, you have I don't even know all of the different, you have golf courses, you have Trump Tower, you have Trump's commercial buildings there in the financial district. I mean, to penalize someone by stripping them forcibly of their business holdings to try to bankrupt a family, but more importantly, a business that is privately held, that is completely un-American. That is communist. That is absolutely abhorrent, because I can tell you, my parents, who are Cuban refugees who fled communism, and friends of mine who left and fled with their lives and nothing else from communist countries, when like Poland was communist, or Russia, or on the East Berlin side of Germany, they will tell you that is totally communist, because communism will come in and strip you and take you of all your wealth. That is not what this country is about. So I'm a little more impassioned today, maybe, about certain things, but I'm just hopeful as we're entering into Thanksgiving holiday season that we can all look around and see gratitude that we have constitutional rights, but also protections. And that even as abhorrent and bombastic of a man like Trump can be, that he also has these constitutional rights. I am Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Purple Politics, and I will see you next week. And I'm wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving with you and your family. Good night. I am sending this to you. Hopefully you like it and you can plug it in. We'll see. Maybe it's better than running last week's show. Anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.